Welcome to the Nashville Current Podcast. I am your host, Ed Clay, and I'm here today with Barrett Hobbs. Barrett, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. We're getting ready to kick off the 4th of July weekend like Nashville's never had. Our bars are closed, no fireworks, but we're still going to have a good time.
Oh, well, that's good. So tell everybody a little bit about your business and what you do in Nashville and your history here.
Well, I'm born and raised in Nashville. My son will be a fourth generation Nashvilleian. So my family's been around these parts a long time. I grew up in the Donaldson area, and my family began businesses in the 50s in and around Donaldson. And as I grew up, we continued to kind of expand into the tourism side of things, hotels and various businesses around the Opryland theme park. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth in the hospitality business, was in the hotels and bars that my family developed. And as I got a little older, I really wasn't smart enough to do anything else. So I kind of followed suit and opened my first bar and restaurant when I was 21 in the Opryland area. That was in 1996, and still rolling with it today. And, just kind of as expanded into downtown as the growth happened, and just anywhere there's an opportunity, we try to go after it here.
Talk a little bit about your bars. How many bars do you have in Nashville?
Total, we've got right now. I've got 6 hospitality venues. I've got the Nashville Palace, which my grandfather started in 1977. I've got the Scoreboard Bar and Grill, which we opened in 1996. Downtown Nashville, I've got Whiskey Bent Saloon, which we opened 10 years ago last month. We have Bootleggers Inn, a moonshine bar on Broadway. We opened about 8 years ago. And Doc Holliday's, which is on the corner of 2nd and Broadway. I'm not real sure. I think I've had that about 6.5, 7 years now, maybe 8. And then we've just rebranded a restaurant in the Opryland area named after my grandfather, called John A's, which is a high-end whiskey bourbon bar with hand-cut steaks and good local cuisine. And then we also have outside of that, but still in the hospitality business, I've got the Buffalo River Resort, which is about an hour west of Nashville, that, the name kind of lends itself. We have canoeing and cabins and fishing, all kinds of stuff, which right now is a booming business. Anything in the outdoor activities, it kind of came out of nowhere. We had a little business we were trying to grow, and it exploded on us. So we've got some challenges with closed businesses, and we've got challenges with businesses that are open.
Right. Yeah, it's complicated enough to run a business when there aren't issues like this right now. But it seems like it's this is a whole nother thing. Now, you're also, I would say, a major leader in the hospitality industry in Nashville, right? And you're on a few boards. Talk a little about the boards that you're on and some of the initiatives on those boards.
Okay. I am, I don't know that I'd call myself a leader in the hospitality industry. That sounds a little boastful, but when you've been around as long as I have in my family, you integrate throughout the city in different areas. And I've been fortunate to get to meet a lot of great people and work with them. The Music Valley Merchants Association is a group of businesses in and around Opryland. The Donaldson Hermitage Chamber, we're a big part of that, and they've kind of merged those two. And then in the downtown area, I'm the chairman of the Merchants Association and sit on the board for the district. And the district is a nonprofit that was originally started to protect the historical buildings in downtown. A lot of newcomers to Nashville don't remember. Basically, developers wanted to flatten all of downtown Nashville, including the Ryman Auditorium. I wasn't a part of the group then, but they started that to say, hey, these buildings are worth preserving. Let's find something to do with them. And I'm proud to still be a part of the district. And then this past winter, Mayor Cooper appointed me to the Music City Convention Center board. So right now, that's kind of what I'm dabbling in.
Yeah, so you're a business owner. You're obviously active in preserving Nashville, doing what's best for the city, and it's a very unique perspective. When I was talking to you yesterday, I know I've talked to you before. I'm amazed at the knowledge of the history of kind of how things have been created and what's gone on. So I wanted to make sure that the listeners and the viewers kind of understood that. Let's talk about the impact of COVID right now in the hospitality industry downtown, what you're seeing. We had a shutdown about 3 months ago. We had a phased reopening, and talk about how it was when we shut down the first time and how hard it was just to get back open.
You described it, spot on what we've gone through. The initial shutdown, I haven't ran across anyone that really questioned the federal government, the state government, or the city government inside the first 30 days. If you've obviously got some conspiracy folks out there and they're doing this to make money for this big pharma company or whatever, excluding kind of the far reaches on both sides. The core business people that I deal with, we were all nervous. We really didn't know what to expect. So we gave everyone the benefit of the doubt for the first 30 days. Let's figure out what we've got. How can we cure it? Can we cure it? And there was so much information that has been, since debunked. And I don't think that they did that on purpose. I really don't think anyone sat in a room and said, well, let's get false information. Sure. I think they were just acting in real time. So as our business is closed, it was, it seems like in some ways it was 5 years ago. In some ways it seems like it was yesterday. There were no rules. There were no guidelines. No one had ever done this before, at least in this capacity. Certainly back years ago in the polio and tuberculosis times and smallpox, they dealt with it then. But our density and our business economy was so different then compared to now. And obviously there's not a lot of people alive, that you could lean back on and say, what'd y'all do, good and bad? So we just kind of took it in stride. And, once 3 weeks rolled around and 4 weeks rolled around, you started to get a sense of no one really knew what was going to come next and what was the best path forward. I think some things were done great. I think some things, with hindsight being, you hate to say it, 2020, because nothing good's coming out of 2020 right now. But having that hindsight, I think most people would agree that maybe a better approach would have been protect our elderly citizens, the youngest children, maybe until we really had a good handle on it with closing of the schools and things like that. I think that was smart now, and I did then. But then the rest of us that really are the engine of America, and it's certainly Nashville and Tennessee, being a revenue-driven economy, I think we should have had two approaches. If I was the mayor or the governor now, and I could go back in time, I would have taken a two-pronged approach. I would have had one committee working on the health part of this, and I would have had one committee working on the economic side. Mm-hmm. And then I would have had those two groups meet and don't come back to me without a compromise would have been my approach. And I think a more balanced approach would put us in a better spot today than where we are.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. Compromise is really not something that I feel like we hear a lot anymore. It seems, there's so much polarization really kind of coming from, it seems like, both sides. And, with this, what we're seeing now, this newest move back to phase two, seemingly out of nowhere. The rest of the country seemed to be, some of the different states had done it, some of the different cities had done it, but the numbers were going up the CDC mortalities were going down, though, and it just came out of nowhere. It didn't seem like they talked to the business community at all, or even really thought about the possible effects of that. What was your experience with this newest shutdown?
Well, the newest shutdown, I felt like it was coming because of, I don't know the right word. Caution isn't word, and nervousness isn't the right word. So, but a lack of
Fear?
something to describe. What's that?
It was fear. It seemed like.
Yeah. From the health department and the mayor's office, um, they will say at times, well, we've got business community people involved. With all due respect, when I voted for the guy, Senator Bill Frist is a fantastic business person. Mm-hmm. He's a fine human being and a great surgeon. But he is so far removed from a real small business, sure, mom and pop local entity that I don't think people like him should have been excluded. Obviously, that's great to have a businessman and a medical person. But this last go around, they did talk to us, and that's what's so frustrating. Is last Sunday I reached out to someone in the health department that we've been given access to, and he was on our side. He was like, "Look, we've got to find a balanced approach to doing this. We have a problem. Whether you can argue the numbers till the cows come home, but if the people in charge of our city right now feel like there's a problem, whether we agree with them or not, something's going to happen." So I felt it was important to be proactive and not reactive to whatever they were going to do. When Texas and Florida both started shuttering hospitality businesses in different levels, the writing was on the wall. If our numbers continued to go up, there was no doubt there was going to be an adjustment. So I reached out to my fellow business friends in Nashville in the industry and said, "Look, give me some ideas. I need them by 9:00 Monday morning." Mm-hmm. So Sunday night, everybody exchanged, dozens and dozens of texts and emails. And I presented it to the health department. I presented it to the mayor. I presented it to Butch Spirit and with the CDC. Butch and us work pretty much daily in good times and bad. And so we presented ideas that we felt like was a common sense approach. It was balanced. The health department contact that we worked with, that was his exact words to me were, "Barrett, we really want to avoid using the word rollback or the perception of the rollback," because he knew, like any business person, there's an ebb and a flow to business. And I think that's what was missing with this decision is there was, even if they acknowledged it, which I'm not sure that they did, their actions are proving they didn't care. Right. That the economic devastation that was going to happen by a knee-jerk response like this doesn't just affect us. And that's what's the frustrating part is it doesn't affect us today and for the next 14 days. Prior to me getting on the call with you, I also sit on a charitable board for the Tennessee Wine and Beer Festival Association. We have that event the third weekend of every October at the Two Rivers Mansion. It's nonprofit. We've given away close to $300,000 in 8 years to local charities in the Donaldson Hermitage area. Mm-hmm. We had to cancel today. Mm-hmm. Why do we have to cancel? Because they rolled us back to phase 2, and the Metro Parks Department can't issue permits unless you're in phase 3. Well, you can't have an event unless you do your permits within 90 days of the event. So we're inside the 90 days. We're not in phase 3, so we can't do anything. So now we just shut down an event that generates thousands of dollars for the Donaldson community and hundreds of thousands of dollars for local communities. That's a good example of what a knee-jerk will do today that's going to have long-running repercussions.
Well, Barry, what do you say to the people that would say, well, you're just worried about the economy. You're not worried about people's lives, because that's what the
Yeah, that's almost a fringe argument. I'll tolerate that to a certain extent. But if I'm going to waste my time in trying to have a conversation, it's kind of like negotiating. If you don't have someone that wants to compromise, there's really no negotiations. It's a one-way conversation. But to address it head on, there's no one in our industry that wants the public say we have to have healthy customers. We have to have a healthy tourism base. We have to have a healthy staff to take care of the tourists and the locals at all levels. My argument back would be this decision didn't just affect Broadway. It's affecting local pubs in Bellevue, in Oat Hickory, in Joelton, in downtown, and certainly in the hotbed of Broadway. I know the health department has said publicly they're concerned about high density bars with 21 to 35-year-olds. Nothing about this decision affects that exclusively. They swung a sword trying to cut off a pinky and cut off the whole hand. Yeah. Instead of just surgically saying, hey, let's meet with those 5 or 6 facilities, figure out some smart things. And that's what we offered. We offered to close at midnight. We offered to reduce capacities down to 125, no matter how big your business was. If you could hold 500, we had the facilities agree to go to 125. We were going to issue masks coming and going, practice a little more social distancing, reduce or eliminate all electronic and DJ music. The kids that want to go dancing and stuff, that's what they primarily are going to go do or listen to. We offered a host of other things as a bridge to get us through this weekend and then look at the numbers on Monday. And if we needed to tighten it down a little more, we would. Or if we had to revert back, at least the business community was a part of it. And we didn't have staff scheduled, food ordered, beer ordered, limes and lemons, cocktail straws, it's not tens of thousands, it's millions of dollars worth of product was purchased Wednesday and Thursday to get us through this weekend. Now, what are we supposed to do? I haven't gotten the phone call yet this morning from the city wanting to buy the chicken I'm going to have to throw in the dumpster.
Right.
And back to your point on the economics and the health, without a strong economy, health deteriorates. Yeah. You can look at that across the globe. I don't care what country, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what religion you are, and I don't really care what system of government you live in, whether it's capitalistic or communistic. If your economy sucks, people are unhealthy.
Well, yeah, and to that point, Barrett, there's a lot of different studies out there that are showing, what has gone on in the past where mortality goes up with unemployment. Some say with every 1% of unemployment, you might get 40,000 deaths in the United States, which is incredible to think how that goes up. That's an incredible amount. You're also seeing, I know in Nashville, Davidson County, the suicide hotlines were up 800%. They're expecting 2 to 3 times the amount of suicides in the United States this year because of the poverty that the coronavirus caused, because of the mental issues rather that the coronavirus causes. The overdoses, they're expecting 2 to 3 times as many overdoses in the United States right now. So, this impact to the economy, to staying at home, the tools that you give people that might have drug issues, the tools that you give people that are dealing with mental illness, go out, be around people, go out in the public, be with friends. Those are all taken away with this. And so I've been surprised at the lack of understanding of the possible unintended consequences that this type of stuff actually causes. And so I'm wondering, are the public health officials taking this into consideration when you're talking to them? Are they taking this into consideration at all?
In the conversations that I've had, it's been primarily economic conversations. If they've got an idea, what is this going to do to you? They want to measure, if we do this, what's going to happen, and this past week, Wednesday afternoon, prior to the press conference, they asked me, what would it do if we closed y'all at 11 o'clock? I said a 30% reduction in revenue for most everyone, as high as 70% for certain people. And you would eliminate 2,000 to 3,000 jobs and about 500 musicians. That was quick, just knee-jerk numbers I could give them. That doesn't drill down into the real economics of Uber drivers, and different things that go along with people going out. Whether it's buying, people don't realize the economy as a whole. I think they look at it right now and say, here's a bunch of bar owners that make a lot of money, make a lot of noise, and they can take this hit. Okay, let's just say for a second that was correct. What they don't think about is when the bachelorette parties come to town and they go to 12 South and they buy a new purse or a pair of shoes or a pair of boots that they're then going to wear out in Nashville coming into our establishments. I don't think the average citizen thinks about the Uber driver picking them up at the airport, or the Starbucks that's sold when they get off the airplane and maybe a sandwich inside our airport, that's someone's job.
Right.
And when the bachelorettes don't come to town, or the tourists, or the moms and dads, or whoever, they don't get off of Southwest Airlines or wherever, come through the airport, the money trail is what I like to refer to it as. Getting them to us and getting them back to the airport, they're going to spend more on the trail going and coming than they ever are inside of our facilities. And, when we just came off of a bloody budget battle that's really not over yet, I don't think the average citizen realizes that was a bloody battle, and we just gave them record sales tax returns, and our city can't balance their budget with that.
Yeah.
What the hell are they going to do next year when, the Music City Center that I sit on that board, it's public knowledge. We've given them almost $100 million this year in giveaways to Band-Aid police, salaries, firemen, teachers, public works, sidewalk initiatives. All of that would come from the taxpayer if the hospitality industry didn't kick it in. A lot of folks don't realize that, at the front of every political campaign, whether it deserves to be at the top or not, public school systems is always on the top. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's a fact. Every elected official has something to say about it. But no elected official ever points out that the state constitution mandates over 80-something% of all tax revenue generated from beer and liquor by state constitution has to go to the schools. So when our bars, we're the big evil empire, in the city, when we're not slinging Jack Daniels and Bud Lights over the bars, who's going to pay for the schools?
Right.
Are we raising the taxes at Walmart? So if you go buy a lawnmower at Walmart, are we going to raise the taxes on that to 200% to make up for the missed revenue on cocktails? So I just don't think people think all the way through the economics and how it's all tied together.
Sure. And, and to your earlier point too, as far as the economy and health, it does then actually trickle down to those things like people that are suffering from mental illness, people that are being forced to, stay at home. And I
think you're spot on. I don't think anyone is paying attention. Look, I've been doing this since '96 on my own with my family for a few years before that as I was a teenager learning. I'm beat down. Yesterday I talked with someone else in the media and they said, how you feeling? I said, I feel like I've been in a heavyweight fight and I'm at the end of the night and nobody's really laid a haymaker on me. It's been continuous body blows to where I just want to sit down on the canvas and go, man, let me have a breather here. And that's kind of what I hear when I talk with the other owners, not just of bars and restaurants, but guys that have car dealerships or, shoe stores or clothing stores. The city closes down, individual clothing stores during phase 1 and phase 2, but you could go to Walmart and buy a pair of tennis shoes. And I'm not picking on Walmart. God bless them. It's an American company. Thank God it's still an American company, So I don't want them not to have an opportunity, but I feel like it's been very selective. I'll give you a good example. I broke my eyeglasses, and I don't have to have them, but, it helps with reading. So my optometrist was closed. So I'm a member at Costco. So I was out there buying steaks, and I walked by, and I'm like, hey, I could just get my prescription and go get my eyeglasses here. I have my prescription. I don't need a review of my eyes. They were closed. The city had closed the Costco eyeglass department, but I could buy food tables and kegerators. And I thought, if my eyes were really bad and I couldn't see to drive, I would think eyewear is essential, and I really don't need to buy a new foosball table today. Sure. So the whole thing's just out of whack, and I don't think it's necessarily intentional. But after, how long has this been going on?
3 months.
90 days?
Yeah.
After 90 days, I feel like the virus itself is getting 99.9% of the city's energy and 0 to the economic side of things. And I'm tough. I've been through Opryland Park closing. I've been through 2 floods, multiple tornadoes. I've made it through the coronavirus. I'm going to make it through this damn thing. Mm-hmm. But when I'm at the point to going, man, I'm just about to throw the towel in. Let me just go sell suntan lotion down at the Floribama with my buddies, and to hell with this fight. If I'm at that point, something's wrong.
Yeah, no, I feel you, Barrett. I was just actually having a conversation with JP here. And I said, I'm a former professional fighter, trained professional fighters, built multiple businesses, and I'm exhausted. I mean, we have been, it's like forgotten, especially here at East Ivy. I mean, the event industry in Nashville, the small event industry, not one event this year, not one wedding. I mean, our season basically is April 1st through, the end of October, mid-November, especially being an primarily outdoor venue. And when you just shut us down, I mean, it's crushing. We had people getting off of unemployment to come back to work, and then all of a sudden, sorry, nothing we can do. It's happening to the catering companies. It's happening to everybody. And I mean, it was like a nail in the coffin for a lot of the small event industry. It's crippling. I was sitting here today thinking, what exactly do we do? Do we just close everything? I mean, is that what? Because you can't do the start and stop thing and run a business. There's no way to budget. There's no way to plan for the future. So I'm in the same boat as you, man. I'm like, what are we even going to do? I have no idea.
No, you are saying exactly what everyone else is saying. And I wish the mayor and his advisors and the health department would think that through. And my conversation post decision with the powers to be was, you guys really, really screwed this up. It did not have to go down like this. You could have put drastic reductions in movement. Here's a great example. Let's just say that I'm wrong and they really thought this through. If that was the case, why in the hell did it take until yesterday for them to cancel the fireworks show? Who in their right mind would have thought a week ago, 30 days ago, 60 days ago? I'll give them the 90 at the very beginning. Hell, don't cancel the 4th of July in April. But when you get down to the end of May, early June, and we're still in phase 2, for God's sake, with phase 3 not even on the horizon, and you think, well, this is a good idea. Let's put 50,000 people in downtown Nashville and wonder if it's going to spike. If they really had a strategic plan in place, they would have canned the 4th of July festivities weeks ago. And that's an economic hit to myself. I mean, hell, if you've got a business in Bellevue, you're dead on the 4th of July night because everybody's in downtown or a surrounding business. So all of us wanted them to cancel the 4th of July stuff well before they did. And I think that's an obvious head scratcher when you are 72 hours from spending $750,000 on fireworks that our city doesn't have. Hell, just from an economic standpoint, they should have said, this isn't the year to blow money.
Right.
I feel like, and I don't think it's orchestrated. I don't think anybody's that smart to probably put this play in, but it almost feels like the only people they want anyone to work for at this point is the government.
Oh, listen, no, it absolutely feels like that. This is a war on business. That is what's going on. Nobody wants to talk about it, but that's what's going on. That's what it is. Like we're at war right now. You have the government, the city of Nashville is more concerned with looking good and doing what the media is kind of driving everybody with fear. Everybody's dying of coronavirus. Let's just be real. I was going over the numbers with you yesterday. Under the age of 40, there, as of last week, about 5,800 cases, there was 0 deaths. The first death was at 41 years old. I mean, a better strategy, a more logical strategy would be to stay away rather than stay home, separate the people, have older people, 65 plus, stay away, have younger people that are in the bars and in the restaurants, stay away from the older people. Go with the actual data, be honest about the numbers. They're afraid by saying, you know what, if you're under 40 or if you're healthy, you don't have that much to worry about, that one person's going to die or a few people are going to die. Absolutely. But people die in car accidents every day. People die of, cancer every day. Hospital errors, 250,000 to 450,000 people die every single year because of hospital errors. And I don't even know if the coronavirus is going to catch up to that one. So, the idea that you just shut everything down because numbers are going up. Well, numbers are going up in a specific demographic that is not at, as high of a risk. So no, we're at a war on business at this point. That's what we're dealing with. Whether they're meaning to do it or not, that's what they're projecting on us. And at some point we got to fight back because
you're right. And Clay, you're spot on whether they mean to be or not. We are now in a battle of survival. If you own a business in this town, if you're not a big box retail store. And that's what's very frustrating. And I said that yesterday, maybe to you and to some other folks. And I don't mean any disrespect. I can't remember the gentleman's name that's the doctor from Meharry that's, on the press conferences every day, and Dr. Caldwell and Janger and all of them. They keep talking about we're all in this together. Yeah. That is such a line of BS that I don't even watch the press conferences anymore, because I'm tired of hearing about that. If we really were in this all together, then Walmart would only be selling shoes and clothes. Costco would only be selling shoes and clothes. They would have picked the phone up yesterday and called American Airlines and United and said, hey, now that you're going to fill every seat, we don't want your planes landing in Nashville. They would go across the board and tell car dealerships, hey, we don't want anybody test driving vehicles because of cross-contamination, and I don't want those businesses to have that burden. That's ridiculous to do to them, just like what they're doing to us is ridiculous. Some smart additional social distancing practices would have been the prudent thing to do. Instead, our numbers go, what the hell are they going to do in September? We go through this 14 days. Inevitably, the numbers are going to go down. It will. Eventually all the numbers will go down because we're either going to have a vaccine or herd immunity is going to kick in. That's the only way this ends. Yeah. And any medical expert that I talk to that's not part of the press conference circus will say this isn't going away. Whether they close this for 14 days or for 114 days, if we reopen in 114 days, the numbers are going to go back up.
Of course. Well, and that was the thing when we opened back up, 6 weeks ago, or whenever it opened back up. I'm losing track of time at this point in life. But I said, of course, the numbers are going to go up. People are going to be out and about. Flattening the curve all that talk about flattening the curve, it was just delaying the inevitable.
Yep.
And a lot of people went along with it. Everybody's going along with it, staying at home, being smart, because that's we were being good people. We wanted to give the medical people time to get the PPE. We wanted to get let them ramp up. But now there's no stopping this thing. This thing is out and about. The smartest thing to me would be to get people to stay away, separate the people by ages.
Yeah, and and you're right, and that's where a lot of people refer to moving the goalposts. And to your point, at the beginning, it was we got to figure out what's going on. How are we passing this? And that was the first 2 weeks. How is it being transmitted? Who's got it? Where's it coming in from? And then after that, it quickly transitioned into we've got to give the medical community time to get ready.
Right.
Because this is going to be in biblical proportions of devastation. So then the hospitals got ready. Okay. And then nobody wants to, at the press conference, not one time did anyone at the press conference ever acknowledge the fact that every major hospital in this city had closed down wings of their hospital and furloughed their employees because there wasn't any patients. I mentioned earlier that I sit on the board for the MCC. I forget how many thousands of beds that the government paid for to have them ready to go there in an LP field. Thank God we didn't need it. But if the numbers get completely out of control again, where are those beds? They're sitting somewhere. We could reactivate if we ever got to that. But if we don't get to that, and the 31 to 45-year-olds or the 21 to 45 that are getting it, the hospitalization rate with them is nil. It is so low that this is a false narrative that we're going to overrun the health industry now. I do believe that was the case at the beginning. Sure. I really do. We didn't have enough masks. We didn't have gloves. We didn't have ventilators, all that mess. But now that we've got it, we've got to push the envelope a little bit and keep our elderly and our sick at bay and roll on.
Well, and the idea that we're going basically off of fear. I've interviewed Dr. Jahangir a couple times. I think he's very well intended, pretty straight shooter. But he always says, go with the data. Well, if you go with the data right now, there aren't more people dying. We still do actually have the ICU beds. Even when they're full, they have a backup plan, by the way. I mean, it's not like, the ICUs run at 70, 75% capacity all the time anyway. So, I mean, it's not like they're not already pretty full. And of course they have a backup plan. That's what flattening the curve was supposed to do. Let's let them get time to prepare for this. So we're there. I think my problem right now with Mayor Cooper is he just seems like a bureaucrat to me. There's no vision. There's no real leadership, like a leader. We need a leader to drive us through this right now, to galvanize the city to really get through this, not to just shut you down before you even know what's going on, not to ruin the life of all these businesses and all these employees that just got off of unemployment back to work and then chop off your legs. That's not leadership. That in a way is like dictatorship.
It's draconian at best, the way that this is being ran, and I've spoke to a lot of our council people in the last couple of days. This also bothers me that you basically have Mayor Cooper, and you could take Mayor Cooper's name out of it and call it Mayor Johnson. Personally, it doesn't matter to me who the mayor is for this thought process. You've got the mayor, and every mayor in every city for the history of America in the past and going forward is going to have one or two people in the inner circle that's going to have his ear. You can put 20 in the room, 18 can go one way, those two go another way, and that's who's going to listen to 99% of the time. So that's what you got. You got the mayor and a couple of people. You've got Vanderbilt employees on the other side and a person that is hired by the Metro Health Department whom are appointed by the mayor to hire Dr. Caldwell. So that's who's driving the whole system. They're in charge of our destiny and today, tomorrow, and on down the road. When you look at that, what's missing? It's the representation of the elected officials that our city have put into place, whether it's the council or the state house of representatives or the state senate. And then you've got the governor. The governor has basically let the city just, here's a blank chalkboard, draw up whatever the hell you want to, and he's hands off, which I have a problem with. And more importantly, when I've talked to the council, I've said, guys and ladies, you folks represent us, not Dr. Caldwell, not Dr. Janger, not, Mayor Cooper to an extent. He didn't win by 100%. So, he was elected though, but his people around him were not elected. So they don't really answer to anyone but him. And at this point, it seems like he's surrounded by a lot of yes people. So my point to the council is they need to start looking at publicly telling the mayor, you are affecting every district economically one way or another, and the council should have a say-so. And I'm really pushing them to draft some type of legislation that may need state approval at some point to say, look, Mayor, you can do what you want to for 2 weeks or 30 days. But after that, you've got to bring it back to the council and say, here is our plan for 30 days, for 60 days, and for 90 days. And if these numbers get out of whack during that time period, then we might have to make some adjustments. But right now, nobody's holding their feet to the fire of what are we going to do in 60 days? What are we going to do in 90 days? There's this snapshot of 14 days and all these matrix and formulas that they're using. And I'm sure the smartest people at Vanderbilt have come up with this stuff, and they're way smarter than me. But they're missing one element, and it's some common sense. You can't run an economy in 14-day windows. No. You can for an immediate part of a crisis from March 15th to maybe April 20th. That zone, you can run it in a bubble. But beyond that, you're going to do a decade's worth of economic damage. Is probably what we're facing in downtown alone in the central business district. You've got over 50 companies that have collapsed that I know of, much less the ones that were going to come that aren't now, or that are on the brink that'll close between now and whenever we get out of this mess. And then you go into other communities like Donaldson. I can name 15 companies that have collapsed due to this. 5 of them off the top of my head had 50 years worth of business experience behind them. 50 years. Think about what the hell's happened in this country since 1960 or 70 economically that they survived.
Sure.
That they can't survive 90 days of this. That tells you that the leadership is off from an economic standpoint. 50 years of survival, and they can't survive 90 days.
No, that's exactly, it does seem like they're really out of touch, much like the 34% property tax increase out of nowhere. It's like, to me, the disconnection from the average business owner, when you're already just in survival, it's like getting kicked in the nuts, man. It's like a big kick in the nuts. And then you got a lot of people like, it's not that big of a deal. They don't run a business. They don't understand. Yeah. Like right now, where does this money come from? We're shut down and you're going to raise our taxes. And I hear them say, oh, well, in the future, like, what do they expect to happen to our real estate market here? I mean, it's going to take
one word,
at least a 30% drop. I mean, I'm already, I have a higher priced home. I mean, those are going to be hit by far the worst, but you're probably going to see across the board at least a 30% drop. The Airbnbs are all going away. The market is going to tank. And then this tax increase won't mean anything.
Nope. It will be measured on a false number, which is what I suggested to the mayor. I suggested to the vice mayor, and I suggested to probably 20 council people. Go to the state and ask for permission to pass a budget that could be amended later. Pass an emergency budget in May or June to say, okay, we need to fund our police, our ambulances, public works, essentials through maybe October 1st or September 15th or something, and see what the federal government's going to give us. They're handing out billions of dollars to the states to then hand out to cities. And we haven't even gotten through that process, but yet let's pass a fake budget based on fake numbers. Yeah. Nobody can tell us what the hell the tax revenues are going to be, because they can't tell when Opryland Hotel is going to open up. Thankfully, they just opened up a few days ago. Now they roll us back to phase 2. I don't even think they're allowed to be open in phase 2. But, maybe they're giving them a pass. God, I hope so.
Sure.
They've taken an absolute beating. And anybody that's listening to this that's in or around Nashville, I'm going to just say this as direct and as plain as I can. This city is not back until Opryland Hotel and the Music City Center have people in it, and it's vibrant, and the Grand Ole Opry has an audience. The Grand Ole Opry is what brought us to this dance, and the Grand Ole Opry will survive after this. It's not stopped playing. There's just nobody in there. But everyone is fooling themselves if you don't think the largest hotel outside of Las Vegas isn't important to the underlying economy of this city. Until Ryman Entertainment Group is back at 80 or 90% of their revenue, every budget we have is a joke. Even NES's, they're their number one customer. Cumberland Hotel is. So NES's budget's got to be off because all the water fountains are shut off, all the lights, all the rooms, all the laundry facilities, all the restaurants. I don't think the average person realizes that we're built on the back of country music, live music, and hospitality. Everybody that say, oh, well, everybody needs to stay at home. I love that. Everybody stay at home. Okay, let's think about that. 90% of the people that say that to me are working in a facility that they haven't lost a paycheck. Yes. But eventually those industries are going to feel it. I spoke with a good friend of mine the other day that owns a sizable electrical company here, an independent guy. And I said, man, how's it going? He says, thank God we had about 8 months worth of backlog. Everybody's yelling at us to do their jobs and we couldn't get to them. So that's going to carry me forward. But he's already seen, he's busy as hell right now catching up. But 12 months, 18 months down the road where he's normally bidding jobs now, it's crickets. So when those electricians don't have a new building to build because of the decisions being made now, what does that mean? That means that electrician isn't going to go buy a boat. They're not going to go to Bass Pro Shops and buy fishing equipment. They're not going to buy little Johnny 2 pair of tennis shoes. They're only going to buy him 1. They're not going to buy that new boat. So whoever's selling insurance to people with new boats, they're not going to get the insurance policy. So these people sitting out, they call them Karens and all these other creative names. Those folks that are saying everybody stay home, we're all going to be okay and sing Kumbaya, they don't have the mental capacity to look 18, 24 months down the road. And they call it trickle-down economics. I call it waterfall economics right now. This is like the Niagara Fall of economic hardships. This isn't going to be trickling in 18 months. No. It's going to be like, what the hell happened? And then the city's going to say, well, we've got a new budget. Oh, my God, our budget's wrong. Well, no kidding, Sherlock.
Yeah.
You passed it during a time when you were using fake numbers. And I know I'm rambling here on this, but I want to make sure I don't forget this. I tell you who's getting a pass, and it's not one person in particular, but the Carl Dean administration, the last 2 years of his helm as mayor and his financial directors are the ones that cut these deals that are now causing a lot of the budget crisis. Yes, they shifted some bonds and they had some loans and all that high-level economics. But it doesn't take high-level economics to know when you look at MDHA and the deals they cut in conjunction with Carl Dean's group under the umbrella of an economic distressed area. That's literally what they have to do, is to declare Broadway and the surrounding area economically depressed. And so when they declared it economically depressed, they were able to incentivize these $100 million buildings to come to town and not pay property taxes. So all your listeners, when your property taxes go up 34% this year, and next year, when the state forces the assessment, so we're all going to get assessed, and a lot of the average folks don't know this. If you're paying $1,000 a year right now for property taxes, multiply by 75%. In 2 years, you'll be paying $1,750. Mm-hmm. That's what your bill is going to be. You're paying $10,000 a year, it's going to be $17,500. And that's where it's not being talked about. And then you've got all these huge businesses and buildings that are beautiful, and we need them, but they're not contributing at all. Oh, well, they put, I won't pick on them in particular, but I use them as an example. Amazon coming to town, or HCA with these big sweetheart deals on their buildings. I want them in town. But the argument that they're going to put a lot of employees to work, hell, the rule that the mayor just passed yesterday put out of work in 1 minute more employees than HCA has brought to town. Mm-hmm. We lost over 2,000 employees in 1 minute. And nobody cares. And over the next 2 weeks with this closure, it'll probably be 5,000-6,000 hospitality workers. There's not a business in downtown that we've given one of these deals to that's got 5,000 employees working at it. Not one. Maybe citywide or across the country, but in downtown Nashville, they don't have any. They don't have those numbers.
Let's talk about, you were talking about Carl Deaton's administration making these sweetheart deals. A lot of people that might have just moved to Nashville, or maybe they just don't know about that, how we've really got into this mess as far as with the taxes and the places not paying taxes. How did that all come about? And talk about, if you don't mind, some specific deals that went down that aren't paying anything.
Well, every deal is unique, and in some deals, the economic incentives make sense. I don't want to make it sound like Carl Deaton's group did every deal bad. Okay. And that was a different time, and Nashville was on a different trajectory at that time. We were still at the, like at this, but we weren't like this. So we were cutting deals when our economy was at a 45 to a 50% angle on growth, that we should use those deals at a 10 to 15% or a flatline growth. So I'll give you one specifically. The 5th and Broadway project is one that just glaringly stands out. Okay, that was announced at the end of Carl's run and the beginning of Megan Barry's run. And you can't really blame the next mayor, because once a project is so far down the road, economically and contractually, you've kind of got to go through it. So, that project was brought up during that time period. And when I say 5th and Broad, I mean 5th and Broadway in the middle of downtown Nashville, for those that are listening that don't know exactly where that is. It's about a 3.5, 4 city block piece of property that held our old convention center that was still standing on that ground. So they cut this deal with this development group. They come to town and they brought some Nashville people in the loop. So it made it look like a Nashville project, but for the most part, it's not. They say, okay, we're going to sell you the property. 4 city blocks in Nashville. I'm not a real estate guy. You've got a lot of real estate. They ran some numbers on it, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I think the low number was $75 million. High number was like $105 million for the land value. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty expensive. We sold it to them for $5 million. And a building sitting on top of it that they couldn't get their financing packages going until that building was removed. So what did the city do? They didn't raise the price and say, look, we'll get it knocked down, but you owe us $7 million. Like $2 million is going to derail a multiple $100 million project. That project's probably $300 million, by the time it's all said and done. What the hell's $2 million? But the city didn't renegotiate. No, that's not what we do in Nashville. Hell, we'll just knock it down for you. So the city spends a couple $1 million knocking down a building they just sold for $5 million. And I'm using round numbers, and somebody will probably hear this and say, oh, Barrett Hobbs is wrong. He was off by this or off by that. So I'm rounding in big numbers, but it's the point that it's factually accurate. We had a property. Let's just say the estimates were off by 40%. Let's knock it down to $50 million. In the center of the hottest city in the United States at the time, we sell 4 city blocks for $5 million.
I would have bought it.
Come on. They didn't even give us a chance. Hell, everybody would have bought it.
Right.
You know, and then the thank you to the community around it is we're going to pay to knock it down, spend $2 million.
Yeah.
So we netted $2, $3, $4 million on it.
Oh my gosh.
You know, rounding again. And what do? They put direct competition with the local businesses in there. You know, they didn't bring in, you know, clothing stores and retail that you can't find anywhere else in the city of Nashville or the country. You know, it wasn't something unique that they went to Clay and said, hey, Clay, we want you to come up with the most unique men's apparel store, and we want you to launch a prototype here, you know, where you can only get these at this place. You know, they measure you, they make them, and you can pick them up the next day. Some kind of real creative deal. No, hell, they just put H&M in there. We got 3 H&Ms within 40 miles of the place. Mm-hmm. We got 1 at Opry Mills. Nothing against the company, but who's going to go to what does that add to the mix? You know, or hey, instead of Ed Smith, who owns 7 boot stores in downtown, a good friend of mine, instead of saying, hey, Ed, why don't you put a store in 5th and Broadway? No, that's not what Nashville does. They go out and bring a direct manufacturer boot company in. So he buys from that manufacturer and sells on the streets of Broadway. What do you think his prices are going to look like? They just took the middleman and put him in business right there, you know? So they do this, and then to cap it all off, they go to the convention center and say, hey, we need $40 million to build the parking garage over here. Taxpayers' money sitting in an account over there that could have paid teachers, policemen, or lowered our property tax that we need. So we shift $40 million over from the convention center to pay for a parking garage on a private business. That is a for-profit, non-government business. So they shift $40 million over. God knows what else got done. And then here's the thanks to the taxpayers of Nashville. No property tax for the whole property. Aren't going to pay anything.
Oh, wow. So that's basically we spent 40 million, sold it for 5, spent another 2 on the tear down. Yeah, that's that's
There's dozens of those. There's dozens of those. If I had time and the energy right now, or just during this past budget process, I would have gone down, and I want to make sure that people are listening, that they understand the system. The state mandates it and gives us a formula that we have to go by. You know, so the council could change it, but they would have to go to the state, which they need to do. It's an antiquated system, in my opinion. It needs tweaking. So the council could do something to correct the measurements that we're using. But Vivian Wilhoit, who's an elected official, she's our tax assessor, head of the tax assessor's office. She's basically a human calculator. A lot of people get mad at her and say, oh, my taxes are going up. She doesn't have anything to do with it. She takes the numbers that are provided, they calculate it, and then they assign it to the parcels and say, this is how much you owe, this is how much you owe. She's a human calculator. Her staff is. So I want to make sure that everybody doesn't bombard her about, you're going up on my taxes. It's not how it works. But I would love to have somebody go to her office and say, I want to pull every parcel that's been done inside the MDHA development package over the last 12 years and find the ones that are truly in economic distressed areas and move them out of the equation. But the ones that are left inside that bubble, and look at, it wouldn't surprise me if there were $4 to $5 billion worth of buildings in downtown that aren't paying property taxes, or they're deferred out 20 years. You know, so then you take somebody like myself or Steve Smith or the Sandersons. You know, they were there on Broadway before me. I've been there a decade. I'm not a new guy and I'm not an old guy down there. But, when they went down and invested time, effort, and money, nobody was there to help them. The city of Nashville didn't go to Steve Smith and say, you know what, we appreciate you going out on a limb for Tootsies or Rippies when there wasn't anything down there. Bridgestone wasn't even built. There was empty buildings, or the Sandersons that did the stage, or Jack Cawthorn with Jack's Barbecue. City didn't give them anything but a few streetlights. And that's it. And these guys helped build one of the greatest streets in our country. And now our reward is to pay for these multi-million-dollar buildings on our backs. So I'll give you, in case somebody wants to look up my facts, 306 Broadway is one of our properties. 5 years ago, our property taxes were about $9,000 and some change. Probably too low. Probably needed to be in the $18,000, $20,000 range, but the formula hadn't caught up yet with the assessments. After this passage, our property tax will be somewhere in the high $80,000 a year number. So we go in 5 years from $9,000 to $84,000 roughly, maybe as high as 96. We're waiting on how they're going to do. We have floors above us that aren't finished out, but they still qualify those as our square feet, but at a reduced rate. So it's up for determination at this point. That system can't work when you've got a multi-$100 million, $200 million retail outfit like at 5th and Broadway paying $0, and you've got a local Nashville-owned business paying $90,000 a year, and we're both selling the same thing. You don't have to be an economic genius to know at some point that system collapses. It just isn't doable.
No, and it's kind of clear for us, I think, though. But it does seem like a lot of the council, doesn't really understand the impact, that this really causes, the ripple effect, especially under these, really, difficult times. So, hopefully, I have hope that they're going to see the impact of what they're doing on small businesses. I hope that they can understand the difference between somebody like Bill Frist, who sure is a big businessman, but has never really run a small business. He has absolutely no clue. Just like I wouldn't have any idea how to run something like HCA. And I do wish that they would really start looking at the impact, of their policy. Barrett, in closing, anything that you'd like to say? We've been going for about an hour here. I appreciate your time. What would you like to close with?
Well, I would like to say, I don't want Nashville and myself to sound like we're negative Nashville. Nashville is a fantastic place. It certainly is changing. It's some for the better. And a lot of what our changes are very concerning to me, that I've lived here my whole life and where my 11-year-old is going to end up. My hope was he would grow up in the same city that I did, with the same values and the same opportunities. And that window seems to be closing a lot faster than I thought. If I had to have a business anywhere in the United States, unless you had the blue water and the beach right in front of you, that's always going to be a draw to Americans. Good times and bad, we're going to the water. Outside of that, being in Nashville, Tennessee, having the regional exposure that we do to visitors, having the culture that we do, and the live music that is the best on the planet, we've got the right product to rebuild quickly. We just need our elected officials to not spend so much time focused on ideological things and complete consummation. They're just consumed with the infection rate right now. If we could just get them to pivot a little bit, this city will get back on its feet. We can move down the road and continue to be one of the best cities in the greatest country in the world. Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I mean, we are living in the greatest country in the world, and it's interesting because sometimes, with everything that we see in the media, I think
people are a little afraid to say that. And I appreciate you saying that. And I totally agree. And there's actually a lot of people that do agree, and we need to start saying it together. Tomorrow's the 4th of July. We have an opportunity to celebrate our country and, really unite around something big. We might not be watching the fireworks, but we should be proud to be Americans, even during these tough times. So thank you, Barrett. And thank you for joining the Nashville Current podcast.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. Happy 4th of July.
All right. Happy 4th.